Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have a great show. I mean, it is going to be a great show. Oh, it is an eye-opening show. It is one of those shows. Folks, we've done, hundreds, couple hundred plus, I don't know, but we're in our fifth year of doing shows every week, right? And reading a book every week, and I share those books with you every week. And every now and then, there's one of those books that here, let me describe it like this. Think of yourself as an onion, right? And all those layers that the onion has those little layers, right? And you know how you peel back the layers? Imagine somebody takes this long needle and they penetrate each layer until they get to the very heart of the onion. That's what success mindsets does. What it does is it penetrates every layer that you've tried to protect yourself with, right? Every mindset, every piece of denial, and we've talked about what denial means, right, on this program. It's an acronym for don't even know I am lying, okay? And it penetrates every one of those layers. Penetrate them for me. Reawaken me. Matter of fact, Dr. Ryan Gattfredson and I were just talking how it just, when we get awakened to our own mindsets, what happens is you're humbled by the fact that you need to change, and then the pile of regret that you left behind, that you want to fix. This is one of those books, folks, that is going to change you if you're willing to let it change you, and that's the key. You have to have enough. Dr. Ryan says this all the time. He says you got to be aware enough to know that you need to change. And we're going to go through these 4 mindsets today, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be insightful. I want you to tell your friends. I want you to tell your children. I want you to tell your employees that they need to be listening to this show, because if they want to change, if you want to see real change, if you want to see change in your business, if you want to see change in your work, if you want to see change in your relationships, if you want to see change in your life, I believe that this is one of those shows that is going to get you started in that direction, a new direction to change your life. It's that powerful of a book, and I can't wait to dig into it. But you know what we do, right? Before we get to him, we do this thing every week, right? We talk about the 4 areas of your life, because listen, you need to be working on these 4 areas: physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because that's what we are, right? And if you're not working on these 4 areas, the truth of the matter is we never stay static, because if you're not growing, the truth is you're dying, right? And so we have to be working on these areas every day, right? So what we do on the show, if you're just new to us, right? What we do is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being my training in these areas is miserable, 10, my training is outstanding, 5, my training is average. How would you say you're doing on a scale of 1 to 10 in each area? So physically, how would you evaluate yourself for exercise, eating right, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep? What would you put yourself on that scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to your daily training? Now listen, whatever the number is, it's okay, right? If you're a 3, nobody's mad at you for being a 3, right? That's your starting point, because what you want to do is, okay, and then think, what can I do to get to a 3.25 or a 3.5, right? We're not trying to get from a 3 to a 10, right? I mean, maybe, and it could be something so simple as maybe just changing something small in your diet, or maybe taking a walk with the dog a little extra longer, or, putting down the soda and drinking a glass of water. It could be anything simple that can make that change for you. All right. Going to bed a little earlier, right? It could be anything, right? Okay. So that's your first number. Second number is your intellectual or mental number, right? We're right brain, left brain, right? Right brain is creative, left brain logical, right? We need to be working both halves, and you can't do that sitting on a couch letting things come at you, right? That's couch potatoes do that. You need to be active participant in your learning, and you have to do that. Matter of fact, Dr. Ryan Gattfredson says in his book, when change your mindset, learning is critical. You got to be an ongoing learner, right? Matter of fact, reading a book is a great way to work on both halves of your brain. Taking up a new instrument, learning a foreign language. But there are so many ways that you could be actively participating in your intellectual growth for your work, for your work, your business, your career, your life, your relationships. You could be intellectually growing. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your intellectual growth? All right, that's your second number. Third number is the emotional number. And Dr. Daniel Goleman has written so much on emotional intelligence, right? and we hear the words EQ, or is real popular, the emotional quotient. Um, but the truth is, we make it really simple when you're working on yourself. Here it is. How well are you able to control your emotions when you're under stress and pressure, or even when you're hangry, right? And then the second piece is, how well are you able to truly understand and tap into the emotions of others? And how would you rate yourself between those two, right? Truth of the matter is, you're in control of your emotions all times. You have a choice. It's not easy, but you have a choice. And when it comes to tapping into the emotions of others, it starts with active listening to the other person. All right. That's your third number. Fourth number is spiritual number, right? And I say this to you regularly, but if you remove the physical, mental, and emotional, you know what you have left? Pretty much the spiritual. We all live by faith. You woke up this morning not knowing you were going to wake up. It's kind of what we do. We go to bed at night not knowing we're going to wake up. We just believe we are. We make plans in our future because we believe we have faith that they're going to happen. We step off the curb to walk across the street when the street sign says walk, believing that the cars won't hit us because we have faith. We put the key in our car to start it up because we believed that it would start. We drank the cup of coffee this morning believing it wasn't poisonous. It's all faith. The chair you're sitting in right now, you sat in it because you believed it would hold you up. But then you ask yourself, what brings you to a place of centeredness in the midst of chaos, a place of peace in the midst of madness, a place of joy when your circumstances are crumbling around you? What do you put your faith in? What do you run to when those things happen? Is it God? Is it meditation? Is it nature? Is it something else? And then you have to ask yourself a question, is it working for you? Because if it's not, then you need to change it. So on the scale 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing there? Those 4 areas are like the tires in your car, right? If you don't have the pressure right, what happens to your car? It goes one way or another. It doesn't work efficiently. It doesn't work effectively. It doesn't do what it should do. And if one tire is low and the others are right, it rolls wrong. And if they're all low, it can ruin the rims. And if it's overinflated, you can blow them up. We just want to get the tire pressure right. So that's why we need all 4 of those areas to come in the right tire pressure. And speaking of someone who's got his tire pressure right in all 4 areas of his life, his name is Ryan Gattfredson. He's Dr. Ryan Gattfredson, and he's a cutting-edge leadership development author, researcher, and consultant. He helps organizations vertically develop their leaders primarily through focus on mindsets. Dr. Ryan is the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of Success Mindsets, the key to unlocking greater success in your life, work, and leadership. And the new author, and I hope he's going to be back on the show to talk about the elevated leader, level up your leadership through vertical development. He's also a leadership professor at the College of Business and Economics at California State University, Fullerton. As a consultant, he works with organizations to develop their leaders and improve their culture. He's worked with top leadership teams at CVS Health, you may have heard of them, Deutsche Telekom, and dozens of other organizations. He has published across a variety of journals, including Leadership Quarterly, Journal of Management, Journal of Organizational Behavior, Business Horizons, Journal of Leadership. The list goes on. His research has been cited nearly 3,000 times. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show for the first time, and hopefully not the last time, Dr. Ryan Gattfredson. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having. What an introduction! I don't know if I've gotten a better introduction than this. So this has been awesome and humbling at the same time.
Awesome. Well, I am thrilled to have you on. I cannot say any more than I can say about the book. It's just that it's awesome. So let's dig right in. You've got this divided into 5 parts. First part is entitled "What Are Mindsets?" and I think that's just a great place to start. You asked the question. I think that's a great place to start. So help people understand mindsets, why they're important, and maybe Ryan, it might be helpful to get people off the edge who are thinking, well, they're really not all that important.
Let's get them off that edge, because that's going to be a really important edge.
It's really important, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people define mindsets as our attitude towards something. So for example, we'll hear people say like, I've got an entrepreneurial mindset. Well, and that's their attitude towards entrepreneurship. Well, that's okay. I don't love that definition. Let me give you one that to me is still a little bit surface level, but is more helpful. And that definition is our mindsets are mental lenses that we wear that shape how we view the world around us. So the belief is that two different people could see the same thing, such as failure, and interpret it differently.
Sure.
So one person sees failure as something something to avoid, maybe something that is indicative that they are a failure. And other people will see failure as an opportunity to learn and grow. In fact, maybe even the best opportunity to learn and grow. And what neurologists and psychologists have independently identified is that our mindsets are the very most foundational aspect for why we do what we do. And so if we're not talking about mindsets, we're going to have a really hard time growing.
You know, it's so interesting because I listen, I'll be honest with you. When I went to graduate school, I studied under B.F. Skinner's last student. So we focused so much on behavior, right? I'm not against that. But the truth of the matter is, the more I have aged, the more I recognize that my mindset determines so many things about how I view the world, how I work, how I interact with my wife, how I interact with you, how I interact with myself. One of the things you have in chapter 1, the title is brilliant. It says, "Is your thinking the best way to think?" Which I can't help but laugh at, right? So help people through that question. When you ask that question, is your thinking the best way to think? What are you asking them really?
Well, I think one of the implicit questions is hopefully do you think that how you think is the best way to think? And I don't know about you, I think most people think that how they think and how they see the world is the best way to see the world. I mean, if we thought we could think better, or if we thought we could see the world better, we probably would have changed already. Right. The reality is that there's two broad things that shape our current mindsets. It's our life's experience and including our upbringing and our current culture in terms of where we tend to operate. And the reality is that for many of us, our mindsets were initially formed in our childhood.
Right.
And we developed certain mindsets that would allow us to survive our childhood. And we've got to ask ourselves, is the mindsets that we developed to survive our childhood, are they set up for us to be successful as a spouse, a parent, a friend, a colleague, a leader, an employee? I don't know about you, but I've found for myself that my mindset's coming out of childhood. I've got some work to do on it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that those mindsets, they feel right. But that doesn't necessarily make them right. And so I've got a mindset assessment, and I'm sure we'll invite people to take that, but it allows people to assess their mindsets across 4 different sets of mindsets. And what I found is I've had 30,000 people take the assessment. Only 2.5% are in the top quartile for all 4 sets of mindsets.
Yeah. Yep.
Most of us have got some mindset work to do.
Oh, geez. That was so eye-opening for me. By the way, the link is going to be on the blog post that's associated with the show. So, wherever you pull up the show, you're going to have the show right up. It's ryangattfredson.com/success mindsets. By the way, if you're wondering where to do the assessment, it's, if you're doing it honestly, it's pretty eye-opening. No, not pretty, very extraordinarily eye-opening is what it is. I found. Here's the thing, Ryan, you and I both know people, and we are that people sometimes that believe that the way they think is absolutely right. I mean, I was one of those people who believed that I had to be right all the time. And I have friends who believe, and as they're watching or listening to the show, they know who they are. And I'm probably calling them out. I'm sorry. But you always have to be right all the time. You can't ever be wrong. And their justification is, but I am right all the time. That's no way to live, is it? Really?
Well, even as you say that, what you step into is there's an element of self-protection.
Right.
Right?
Right, yeah.
It's there, and we've all got it. We are all self-protective in our own unique ways. And what we are protecting ourselves from foundationally is a fear.
Mm.
In this instance, a fear of being wrong.
Mm.
Therefore, I always need to be right, because we attach it's a limiting belief that if I am wrong, then I am not of worth.
Mm.
So I always have to be right.
Mm.
And it's just, if we put it to the test, it's a flawed assumption. It feels right, but it's flawed. And ultimately, the more that we are self-protective, the harder it is for us to be a positive influence to those around us.
God, that preaches. Man, that's good stuff. It's because you're right. I'm not trying to blow up your bubble, but you are right in this aspect. Um, one of the things you see in chapter 3. Chapter 3's title, by the way, is "The Power of Mindsets to Unlock Greater Success." When you overlook your mindsets, you limit your ability to effectively navigate life. And you ask a question, and I just want to reach this out, and then I want you to just jump on it somewhere. Do you blame the wrong internal factors such as your intelligence, ability, or personality? Or do you diagnose your lack of success as being the result of not having the most ideal mindsets? And you say the misdiagnosis is problematic. Talk about that.
Hugely problematic. Yeah, let me give you this is a story from my book and from my life. Is my freshman year of college, I signed up for the Weeder pre-med chemistry class, wanting to become a medical doctor. And at the end of that year, I got the lowest grade I'd ever received. It was a C. And the way that I chose to interpret this was my mindset running amok, was, well, chemistry doesn't come naturally to you. You better change your major.
Mm.
And so that's what I did. I changed my major. That was it seemed right. It seemed logical. It felt right. But I look back and I just kick myself, because what I never did is I never questioned my study habits.
Right.
Right. I just felt like and this was me having a fixed mindset, is I am who I am and there's nothing you could do about it. Either I have it or I don't. And I didn't have it with chemistry. So I didn't even think to put in any additional effort.
Right.
And I didn't believe that I could become a have. So I simply gave up on my dreams of becoming a medical doctor. So what I was questioning at that time was my ability. And I just said, I don't have the ability. The reality is, I think I had the ability. I didn't have the right mindset that led me to have the right work ethic.
Right. Yeah. Well, isn't it funny how you look back on some of those things, right? And I think about the mindsets I had in college. I struggled with physiological psychology, right? The brain. I struggled with it. And then I got older and I started studying. And what was one of the things I ended up teaching was physiological psychology, and I got it, right? But at the time, I struggled with it in grad school, right? Because I had a mindset that said, "Oh, well, it's it's not what you do," right? And then when you get older, you kind of go, "Well, shoot, I can learn that. I can do that."
Yeah.
What changed? Well, I changed, right? And that's critical to what you're saying in success mindsets. Isn't that one of the fundamental pieces of any one of these 4 mindsets that we're about to talk about, is the belief that people can change, or or on the other side, you believe that you can't change? Talk about that.
Well, do you want to dive into the 4 sets of mindsets, or do you still want to stay higher level?
No, let's. Well, you know what? Let's just go into growth mindset versus fixed, because that's one of the 4, right?
Yep.
So I'll tell you what. Why don't we stay high level for a minute, just on that one question of believing whether you can change or not change. Take a break and then come back to growth mindset.
Perfect. That sounds good. So one of the things about, and this is one of the things that is great. Well, I'll even back up here. So one of the things that we found is, in the last 15 years, we have learned more about the mind than all of time before that.
Mm.
The reason for that is because we didn't have the technological advances to be able to study the mind in the way that we needed to until about 15 years ago.
Mm.
And one of the biggest findings that we've had from studying the mind is that our mind is malleable. We can, our mind is plastic. We could change it. It's not fixed. That ultimately what we're talking about when we talk about mindsets is we are talking about neural connections in our mind. We all have, for example, a fixed mindset neural connection. We all have a growth mindset neural connections. It just so happens that one of those is stronger than the other. And whatever is stronger, that's the default mode in which we process information. That's what comes most naturally to us. And that doesn't mean that we can't, if I have a fixed mindset, I can't turn on a growth mindset at times. We can, but what's our dominant mindset? And the reality is that our mindsets, or these neural connections, are a lot like muscles. The more we use them, the stronger they become. And so if we ever want to shift our mindsets, we've got to be willing to strengthen them. And so when we understand that mindsets are like muscles, then we should have the implicit belief that we can always change. And we could change in a very foundational way.
Beautiful. His name is Dr. Ryan Gattfredson. The book is Success Mindsets, Your Keys to Unlocking Greater Success in Life, Work, and Leadership. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Folks, Epic Physical Therapy, my physical therapists think they should be yours too. Listen, they are absolutely fantastic. They will customize a treatment program specifically for your individual needs. Listen, they work with people like me and you and professional athletes. Doesn't matter. When you're looking for epic relief, epic recovery, epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. That's EPIC.pt.com, and Linda Craft and Linda Craft Team Realtors. Listen, for more than 35 years, they have been helping people all over the world not buy and sell houses, but helping them transition to their next level of life. Because if you think about it, every place that you ever lived has been a life transition, and that's what they want to help you do. So when you're ready to make your next transition in life, start with the people who've been helping thousands of people transition their lives. That's Linda Craft Team Realtors. That's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And shout out to Hint Water, the official beverage of DBTV. That's right. We are on, we're available in over 250 million homes now worldwide. We just went into cable companies on Canada, Germany, and I can't remember all the other countries. We're like 60 countries now on cable companies where you can be watching DBTV, which is the station that has this show, A New Direction. So Hint Water, Kara Golden, the owner of Hint, has been on the show, and it's the official beverage of not only this show, but of DBTV. So get yourself some Hint Water. That's just a hint. And we're back here on A New Direction with Ryan Gattfredson, Dr. Ryan Gattfredson. Apologize for that. And his book, Success Mindsets. All right, so here we go. It's time to dig into the 4 mindsets. First mindset is fixed versus growth mindset. What is it? And what are some of our, I kind of want to play WebMD here. What are some of our symptoms, Dr. Ryan?
No, this is great. Before I answer that question, which I definitely want to do, is I think what we're going to be doing here, as we talk about the 4 different sets of mindsets, we're doing something that I think is really powerful. Is we're probably going to put labels on things that, if you're listening to this, you may not have had labels for before. And why this is so powerful is that until we can't tame it until we name it. We've got to have labels for these things, because it's only when we have labels and an understanding of these things can we introspect about them. And I'll be honest with you, Jay, I just got done right before I hopped onto this. I got done replying to an email. There's a group that I was working with this last week. I walked them through the workshop on these different mindsets. They took my mindset assessment, and they were deeply offended that their mindset results came out as fixed. And this is, it's not surprising, but they were deeply offended that their mindsets came out as fixed, and they got reactive, they got defensive, and they just weren't creating space for the idea of introspecting around this. In fact, I got another email. You'll chuckle at this. I got an email a couple months ago from a lady. I was going to do the workshop the next day. She got her mindset assessment results, and she's one of the leaders of this group, and she sends me this kind of scathing email like, "These mindset results are wrong. I am not attending your workshop tomorrow." And I could tell she was hot. And so I didn't reply right away. And the next morning I wake up to an email, from her, and she says, all right, so last night I talked to my husband, and I think it's going to be a good thing that I'm a part of your workshop today. Like, you can't write this script any better, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's, I think many of us, we're touching at, as you talked about the onion analogy. When we talked about mindsets, we're talking about something really deep, maybe the most deepest part of ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's natural for us to get defensive if we find something here that we don't like. But if you do, welcome to the club. It's like, everybody but 2.5% have got apparently some mindset work to do, myself included. So
yeah, myself too.
All that being said, sorry for that preface, but
No, that's awesome.
let's jump into that fixed and growth. So, and we've talked about this already just a little bit. So a fixed mindset is when we believe that we can't change our talents, abilities, intelligence. I am who I am, and there's nothing you can do about it. Who I was 5 years ago is the same person I am now, and who I am going to be 5 years from now is who I am now. A growth mindset is when we do believe we could change our talents, abilities, intelligence. Who I am now is only a shadow of who I'm going to be in the future. And this is really fascinating, because out of the 4 sets of mindsets, this is the one that leaders and executives struggle with the most. And here's how it ends up showing up from my experience of working with individuals is when we have a fixed mindset, we don't want to fail, because if we fail, that says something about who we are and our worth. And so those with a fixed mindset always want to look good. They only want to do the things they know they will be successful at. And they have a reluctance to take on challenges. No, leaders happen to have a lot of pressure to look good, which incentivizes this mindset. But while it feels good and it's self-protective, it holds us back from learning and growing. If we have a fixed mindset, we are unlikely to let go of what has worked in the past and grab hold of what will work in the future. It's only those with a growth mindset who create space for the idea that they could fail, that they're actually willing to step into uncertain and complex situations where they may fail, but they will ultimately learn and grow. And that's what they care about, is that learning and growing piece.
This is where I'm going back to thinking about the 2 people that said, they were offended, because you talk about this in the book, but it's kind of a Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Of, we overestimate, how good we are at something, and we underestimate how bad we really are at something. And I think this is true, that we overestimate that we're probably in growth, and we overestimate how much growth we have, and we underestimate how much fixed we are in, but that we're more fixed than we think we are. Because, I'm going through these things again, right? Growth mindset, people place priority on learning and growing. And of course, Carol Dweck, is, just a genius. Growth minded people faced with challenges see opportunities to advance and progress, remain optimistic. But fixed mindset people, when they began to fail, they start beginning to see themselves as failures. I keep running over, and then there's more subtleties, right? That people don't pick up on themselves. And because you can have people go, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't do that. But then their behavior plays it out, doesn't it?
Can I give you an example of that?
Yeah, I would love it.
So I've been working with an executive team of a mid-sized organization. They've got 1,000 employees. In fact, they've doubled in size in the last year. They went from 500 to 1,000 employees. So they're having a massive amount of growth. And I'm meeting with the CEO. The CEO takes my mindset assessment, comes back. He has a fixed mindset. And of course, he's inclined to question this. I mean, how could I have a fixed mindset if my organization's growing? And in my coaching call, I asked him the question, because he's the founder of the organization. I said, why did you start your business? And he said, to prove others wrong.
Oh.
And immediately it's, oh my goodness, we're operating from a place of insecurity and self-protection.
Wow.
around. And so whenever something goes wrong in the organization, whenever they have problems or whenever a failure occurs, he wigs out. He micromanages because he doesn't want to fail. And so he tells himself he has a growth mindset. But the reality is he's got this fear and insecurity that he has a really hard time getting over. And it's this idea is if I fail or if my organization looks bad, that's a reflection of me as a person.
See, this is where they miss it. I think I got it here. Just because your business is not growing, just because your business is growing doesn't mean you have a growth mindset. Because it has nothing, the two don't have anything to do with each other necessarily.
Yep.
I think that's where people miss it. If I was a fixed mindset, they have this idea that if I was fixed as a mindset, then my business wouldn't be growing. But that's simply not true. The fact may be that you're in a fixed mindset, you could be growing, but you're not growing at nearly the level you could be growing at if you had a growth mindset. Is that fair?
Precisely. And just to add to that is when we have a fixed mindset, we're actually being driven. Our internal operating system is actually being driven by fear. And fear can help us do amazing things. But could we do them better if we operated from a place of greater security and less fear? Yeah, I think so.
Sure. Yeah, no.
So it's less about the outcome. It's more about the means that we're using to get to that outcome.
Yeah, I just listen. I coach executives and professionals, and so often, I will hear people say, "Well, they're never going to change. This employee is never going to change," right? Because that's the way they are. That's the way they were born. That's the way their personality is. They're unable to change. Or I've even heard other coaches say, "Well, you know what? They're just uncoachable." Right? Those are those signals of they either have it or they don't. Ryan.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you've heard it too, right? Right. I mean, those are the subtle cues of the fixed mindset. All right. So go ahead.
I've got a really interesting study for you. And in fact, I heard it earlier today. In fact, and I've asked for the source. So I need to double check the source. But it's coming from somebody who I really trust and a researcher. And there's been research done that has looked at three different groups of people. People who have not experienced trauma in their lives significantly. People who have experienced trauma, but they are not acknowledging it. And people who have also experienced trauma, but are acknowledging it. And what they find is that the people who lead and operate from a better place are more effective are not the people who had no trauma. It's the people who have had trauma and acknowledge it. They awaken and they step into the messiness of this. And that's part of what we're doing. I mean, ultimately, if we're going to get really deep and really to the core of the onion, here's what I would say is that if we have negative mindsets, it's a signal that our body has been through trauma in the past and we are self-protecting. And to me, trauma isn't something that has occurred to us. It's that our body has a stress response system, and we've experienced situations where the stress of that situation exceeds our body's capacity to deal with it. And when that occurs, our body naturally has to move to be self-protective. And naturally, it's going to develop fears around where that came from. And so ultimately, when we're talking about mindsets, we're awakening to these fears and insecurities that have probably come about because of things that happened to us that we weren't prepared to deal with at whatever age they happen to us.
So we scab and scar.
Yeah.
We're scarring, right? We scab and then we scar over.
But then this is the most beautiful thing about it. Using that analogy is we can heal. That's the process of focusing on our mindsets is really at a foundational level. It is healing our minds. It's healing our hearts so that we operate not from a place of insecurity, but from a place of security.
Wow. All right. So help us develop a growth mindset. What can we do? How can we get there? How do we get give us a few ideas, give us a few steps to help us get to that growth mindset. What can we do?
So I'd say this about any of the mindsets, and you alluded to this earlier, is I don't think we can become great in a mindset without first becoming an expert in it. So my invitation is always to learn more about it. I mean, I would say that about any characteristic, right? Whether it's
Right, right,
humility, empathy, vulnerability, like whatever it might be. If we want to become great at it, we've got to be an expert
right.
in it. The other thing that we just need to keep in mind is, as I alluded to earlier, is our mindsets are neural connections. And what the research suggests is if we spend even just 5 minutes exercising our, in this instance, growth mindset neural connections, we could see an impact for the next 2 weeks. And that's only one intervention. But what if we were to stack interventions on top of each other? And these interventions could be reading books, reading articles, journal exercises, a great podcast like this, journaling, discussion questions. Right? If you take my mindset assessment, I've got a whole host of resources that people can access. But that's the idea. It's just we've got to hit the gym for our mind.
I love. I listen. I love this because I'm so into it. You talk. You did give some step by step. You talk about learning about fixed and growth mindset. Becoming aware of your current mindset was one. Identify your destination, right, and chart your course, and then let go of your prevailing mindset. Why is that one so hard? Why is it so hard to let go of your prevailing mindset?
Have you ever been with a kid when they are doing the monkey bars for the first time?
Yeah.
Right? It's like you could see it on their face, right? So what happens is they get up on the tower, they grab a hold of the 2 bars with both
Right.
hands, or the 1 bar with both hands, and then they let their feet dangle. And now they're in this position where they're like, okay, I don't want to fall and I want to get to the end. That's my goal.
Right.
But the scary proposition is in order for me to get to the end, I've got to let go with one hand.
Right.
And if I let go of with one hand, I'm likely going to fall.
Right.
And that is at the heart of what we have to wrestle with in order to shift our mindsets. Our desire to get to the end of the monkey bars has got to be stronger than our self-preservation. We've got to care more about getting to the end than we do about not falling. And it's only until we get to that place that we'll be able to move forward.
That's beautiful. All right, let's move to the next one. Open versus closed mindsets. What are we talking about here?
All right. So this is how open our mind is to the ideas and suggestions of others. So when we have a closed mindset, we see our mind as a bucket and our bucket is full. What happens if we pour something into a full bucket? Well, nothing gets absorbed. It just runs off the side. People with an open mindset, they may have a lot in their bucket, but they believe that they could be wrong. So they leave a little bit of room for at least a little bit of room for the idea that they could be wrong. And that allows them to take in the ideas and suggestions of others. And so foundationally, those who have a closed mindset, they believe that they are right. Therefore, they want to be seen as right. They want to have their ideas supported. They want to be the one answering all the questions. They don't want any feedback, or they don't want to invite new perspectives. It's only those with an open mindset who foundationally believe that they might be wrong that are willing to take in the ideas and suggestions of others. They don't care about looking good. They care about finding truth and thinking optimally. Right. So they're less inclined to be the one providing answers, and they're more inclined to be the ones asking questions.
Yeah, boy, can you see this? This is it me, Ryan, or have I been witnessing over the course of the last 8 to 10 years less gray and more people trying to be black and white and prove that they're right?
There is ample research that is finding that we are growing increasingly polarized, for sure. Right. Yeah.
Right. And whenever I think of polarization, because I live in a place called Raleigh, North Carolina, where we have 3 schools: Duke, University of North Carolina, and North Carolina State University. Right. And if you ever want to see polarization, all right, just get to basketball season here. It gets there's polarization. And there's so much, and it's such a closed mindset that there's no, people will not cheer for the other team, even if their team is not in the tournament, they will not cheer for the other team, right? It's just not possible because it's so fixed. But I am seeing this in not just, and I know it's a silly analogy, but I'm seeing this in so many areas now where people are so fixed on this one thing, right? I mean, there's almost an anchoring to it, an anchoring bias to it.
Yep.
Right? Am I wrong that I'm seeing this? Because I feel like I'm surrounded by it.
You're not wrong. We're seeing it. This is an idea that comes up in my new book, but I'm going to give you a kind of it's a very wordy concept, but it is the idea of cognitive and emotional sophistication. That what we know is that just as we could stack people up from tallest to shortest in terms of height, we could also stack people up in terms of their level of cognitive and emotional sophistication. And what we find is that the people who are usually more polarized operate at a lower level of cognitive and emotional sophistication. They think more in white and black.
Sure.
It actually comes from a place of protection and fear. They like the security. Push back against it if you think I'm wrong, but I think the most cognitively and emotionally sophisticated people I know, they will never be polarized. In fact, they want to sit in the messiness of the middle because you could take any topic. Let's just take abortion as a hot topic here in the country, in the recent past. Is that you can take any topic and they recognize that there are pros and cons to both sides of the argument. Sure. And they want to understand those.
Right.
Like that's the most important thing to them. And that isn't to say that they can't take a stand.
Right.
It's just that they wade through the messiness before, and rarely are you going to see them way out on the edges.
Right.
And that's just a greater level of cognitive and emotional sophistication. So when we talk about these more negative mindsets, like we've talked about fixed and closed,
right,
they're justifiable because they're protecting us in some way, but they're just not very cognitively and emotionally sophisticated.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You cannot say to me that you're accepting when you can't listen. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. Because I have a lot of people go, well, I accept everybody, but will you listen? Will you listen without judgment? Were you willing to entertain their thought process? And you say something so beautiful in the book. You say, soft front, stiff back. Talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think this is a way to talk about it that I think people connect with is we can always take a stand, right? That in fact, for many things, we need to take a stand. That is us having a stiff back. But really, the concept around open and closed mindsets is to what degree do we have a soft front? Are we willing to take in the ideas and suggestions of others? We don't have to run with them.
Right.
But we would probably do well to validate them.
Right.
Because if we don't, then how we are perceived by everybody else is that I have a closed mindset, which I do. I would in that instance.
Right. That's beautiful. His name is Dr. Ryan Gattfredson. The book is Success Mindsets. You're listening to him. And by the way, is it not awesome? You're listening to him on your new direction. Hey, folks, Epic Physical Therapy. They offer the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment, including the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, Normatec compression sleeves, and my favorite, the Game Ready. That's just a few. They're also certified in the most cutting-edge treatments like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping, and that's just a few. Listen, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And you know what? If you go to lindacraft.com, that's Linda Craft, LINDACRAFT.com. If you go there, I'm going to tell you, you're going to find one of the most comprehensive real estate websites with more information than you could possibly even imagine. It's because when she started building that website back in 1997, yeah, she was at the very beginning of it because she was at the bleeding edge of the technology. She started building this thing to make something that everyone, regardless of where you're at in your home journey, selling or buying, could come and get all the information that you need. I'm telling you, check it out. It's lindacraft.com. It's the reason why she's helping people all over the world. Just go to lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Ryan Gattfredson and his book, Success Mindsets, your keys to unlocking greater success in your life, work, and leadership. And hopefully you're having a good time, Ryan.
This has been great. Love it.
Awesome. Well, let's jump to the next. We'll jump ahead to the next set of mindsets, because I think these are also as well cool. And that is the promotion versus prevention mindset. What is it, and what are we dealing with here?
Yeah. So prevention mindset is kind of on the negative side of the continuum. Promotion's on the positive, and we just fall somewhere along this continuum. So when somebody has a prevention mindset, they're primarily focused on not losing and not having problems. Those that have a promotion mindset, they're focused on winning and reaching goals. And to bring this to life, I think it's helpful to use a ship captain analogy. So if I'm a ship captain with a prevention mindset, my number one focus is on not sinking. I don't want any problems to occur. I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to rock the boat. But when a storm comes on the horizon, we've got to ask, how's that prevention-minded ship captain going to react or respond? And what they're likely going to do is they're going to go away from the storm, maybe to a harbor or port that feels safe. But we've got to ask ourselves, is that safe harbor or port, was that their intended destination when they originally set out? Probably not. People with the promotion mindset, or a ship captain with the promotion mindset, of course, they don't want to sink, but that's not their number one focus. Their number one focus is on a destination and making progress towards it. And so when that storm comes on the horizon, they don't run from it. They ask themselves, does that stand between me and where I want to go? And if the answer is yes, then they prepare to take on the storms. They batten down the hatches and they muster up the courage to brave the winds and the currents associated with that storm, because it's the only way that they're going to end up in their intended destination. So those with the prevention mindset, it's very justifiable. We don't want to have problems, but we end up going the course of least resistance. It's only those with the promotion mindset that end up in a destination of their own proactive design.
You point out that the prevention mindset, when it comes to the prevention mind, there's evidence that suggests that a prevention mindset may be our default setting. Help us understand that.
Yes, and it is justifiable. I mean, who likes to have problems? Nobody, right? And so it's reactionary. It's not very cognitively and emotionally sophisticated, but it's our default mode. In order for us to have a promotion mindset, we've really got to have two things. We've got to have a clear destination, and we've got to have a strong or a powerful why that will allow us to have the motivation to get through the storms. And if we don't have a destination, if we don't have a why, then we're going to just avoid the storms, because why would we face them otherwise?
Oh, okay. So I am a big, I speak, all over on, I'm doing a new talk right now on purpose, finding your purpose. And you have a subheading here, speaking of having a clear purpose. And I'm quoting you. You say, I have found that many people do not have one. Matter of fact, you conducted a study with over 110 participants and found that 73% of participants indicated that they had a purpose, but only 11% who stated they had a purpose were able to articulate it in a way that indicated that they had given the matter any significant thoughts. And then you go into the Craig and Snook research, which, by the way, is brilliant as well. Help people, because I try to help people get through this with purpose, but we are so purposeless. And what happens when we're purposeless? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we flounder, right? And let me give you an example, because here's even another way to think about it. I was just with an organization this last week, and I asked them if they had a purpose statement, and they said yes. And it's this French Canadian company, so it was in French, and so they tried to translate it for me, and I'm going to butcher it, but they said, our purpose is to ensure our prosperity so that we could benefit our customers.
What?
And I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, okay, I could see that. But
Okay.
I said, which comes first, yourself or your customers?
Right.
And they're like, oh, so who do you think you emphasize more, yourself or your customers?
Right.
Well, we've got to be prosperous before our customers can be prosperous. Well, I said, well, that's a belief that you have, but let's push against this. What do you think is more accurate? That the more prosperous you are, the better off your customers will be? Or is it the better off your customers are, the more prosperous you will be?
Right.
It's like, and they're like, oh, I think it's that latter one, right? So part of it is with all of this is it's one thing to say, do you have a purpose? The other part of this is to say, is this purpose something that's even bigger than myself? Because if it's not, our focus is going to be fully inward, which is, we're going to talk about this in our next one, and it's not necessarily fully outward. And when you think about any great leaders, any great people, they had a purpose that was bigger than them.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, let's move to it. Let's move to the outward versus inward mindset. What is it, and what are we dealing with here?
All right, let me ask you if you're guilty of this, Jay. So can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Maybe you can join me in this club. So have you ever been driving around on the freeway and a car speeds past you, and then they put their blinker on to get into your lane right in front of you, and you don't let them in?
So I want to say no, just publicly. I want to say no, but my wife, who watches and listens to the show, is right now laughing, going, you do that. You do that every time we're driving down the highway. You're the one who will speed up so the other person can't pass. I'm like, yes, so I'm guilty.
All right. So I'm glad I'm not the only one. So
Yeah.
we're in good company here. I think we're in good company. At least I think I'm good company. So
yeah.
So I like this example because it's one that we could kind of chuckle with, but at the same time, it's kind of a jerk thing to do.
It is. That's the problem. That's what hurts the most, Ryan. It opens me up to going, what a jerk am I to do that?
Well, so now I've got another question for you, if you're willing to step into it, is because I always feel the need to justify it. Like when I do it, I have to justify it. How do you justify it?
Because I want to win. I want to be ahead. I want to be ahead. I want to be the guy in front. You know what? I'll tell you why, Ryan, because I was going down the road, right? You've been way back there and you decide, and now you want to cut in line. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay, there you go. There.
Right. So
okay,
what we're saying is my position.
I just did. Okay. I feel miserable, but thanks.
No, you're good. You're human, Jay, is what we're learning. So this is good. So what we're saying to ourselves in this situation is, my position in this lane is more important to me than it is to you. And when this happens to me, is how I justify it is I don't say I didn't let that person in. What I say is I didn't let that car.
Idiot or that car.
Or that idiot. That's another one, right? So what we're doing is we're seeing ourselves as more important than others. And when we do that, we have a tendency to see others as objects.
Right.
And so an inward mindset is when we're seeing others as being, as ourselves as being more important than others. When we have an outward mindset, we see others as being just as important as ourselves. This allows us to see them not as objects, but as people, and to truly value them as such. You want to push back against the car analogy?
Yeah, I can't, because you and I had to talk before the show, just how, we've got this pile of regret and how humble we are when we go through these 4 areas, right? And you think you score so good, and then you realize you got work to do, I mean, you just do. as good as you think you might be. You've just got work to do. We've been on an hour. I don't know if you know this or not, but we've been on an hour already. I don't want to stop you because I could let you go forever, but I have to. You've been amazing. I would love to bring you back in the future if you want to be on the show. I would love.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell people how they can get a hold of you because you were great.
Yeah, well, and things again. What we're doing is we're putting labels on these things, right? It allows us to start to introspect. So I hope you'd be willing to step into this. But if you want to step into it further, my website, ryangattfredson.com, is a great place to go. I've got success mindsets. I've got my new book, The Elevated Leader, coming out in 2 weeks. And then the next best place would be LinkedIn, and would love to connect with anybody there.
His name is Ryan Gattfredson. The book, Success Mindsets, Your Keys to Unlocking Greater Success in Your Life, Work, and Leadership. It went by so fast. Folks, it's the show. I say this to you every week. You're in control of 3 things in your life: your attitude, your effort, and your resilience. Doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. You have control of what your attitude is going to be towards it, your effort, your excellence, and your resilience getting back up again. Do it. Get back up. Be resilient. Have the right attitude. I'll be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great book. It's going to be another great show. And as I say to you every week, all over, you have a lot of choices. Thank you all over the world. And ciao, everybody.